Hello everyone, what we have here is a couple of bits of sycamore. Well, at least this is sycamore. I'm not entirely sure what that one is. Sycamore is a very heavy, dense hardwood in the UK, fairly slow growing. And I bought this from a timber yard in South Wales, near to a very nice little park up, Wentwood Timber or something like that. It's been planed on this side, and there are some grooves there. You can see a line where the planer blade's dug in, and this is quite common with planers. As the material gets to the end of the rollers, the height changes very, very slightly and you get this damage. But this is pretty flat along this plane surface. The other side is not so flat. You might be able to just see it's touching the table. This table's almost dead flat. You can see it touching there, and there's a gap underneath there. So I need to surface the other side. Firstly, to get it both sides flat, and secondly because it's quite a heavy piece of wood and it's a bit too thick at the moment. This is going to become effectively the worktop. It's more like a surround because the sink in the van fills up nearly all the space. So we're going to end up with a live edge at the front of the sink, and maybe an upstandy type part from the other live edge along there. And I've removed some of the bark. I took this off when I bought this bit of wood. And then this piece over here, again, has been planed, but because of the way the grain goes, it's not as smooth as this piece is. That's going to become a table. Again, it's got a live edge all the way around. It's an interesting piece of wood. You can see it's probably a branch off the side of the trunk of the tree, and this is the bit they've just chopped off where the branch joined. So I've got a nice circular grain all the way around. Again, the bark will all be taken off just to create a live edge, and I need to thin this tabletop down considerably because it's quite heavy and a bit too thick. So I need to make something that I can get the other side of this piece of wood and both sides of this piece of wood flat. I have a planer over there. It only works up to material 10 inches wide, so that's no good. So I'm going to make a planer sled. What I meant to say is I was going to make a router sled. Now my workbench that I've got in the middle of my workshop, once upon a time, this thing used to be a billiard table or a snooker table. And the bed is a dirty, great, thick lump of chipboard faced with a ply. In fact, I wonder if this has been made out of maybe a very large fire door, because it's very, very heavy. And then that table that I showed you earlier on, or the surface rather I showed you earlier on, that's just a cover that they had on it. It's made out of chipboard, and I use that as my general purpose workbench. But this is relatively flat, and I modified this some years ago to take my first table saw. I still use it occasionally, but I do have a proper table saw in the other side of my workshop. So most of the time this is covered up with this cover. This surface is a lot flatter than that, and that's got some damage on it. So this is what I've actually mounted this router sledge on. These two bits of aluminium here, these angle irons aluminium, you can see the colour, they're yellow. They're what came off the roof of the Iveco van, and they used to house the antennas and everything else. And they just happen to be very handy bits of angle iron. Originally they were nearly 5 metres long, not angle iron, angle aluminium rather. And I use them as straight edges. I've cut them down, these are both 2 metres long. And then over there, I just happen to have, in my bits box, I'll zoom in slightly, some leftover aluminium from some of the lockers in one of the vans I dismantled, or maybe even the crafter. I think this came out of the crafter. Those pieces are already cut to length, so I haven't made this any longer than, I couldn't make it any longer because that's the longest piece I had. 4 bolts, just to bolt together, and all I'm doing at the moment is literally making use of the slots in the actual angle to saddle this, and I can slide that up and down enough that it works. In an ideal world I'd have bearings or wheels on it, but for this exercise in just getting something to flatten this piece of wood, that works. And then again, I'm making use of the slot. It's a 5mm slot. No, it's not. It's a 6mm slot in the extruded aluminium. I've just used the remnants of one of the doors from the ambulance, which is an aluminium composite. It's got black plastic in the middle and an aluminium sheet on either side to make a router plate, and then I can just slide the thing up and down. If I was going to do loads and loads and loads of flattening, I would mount it on linear bearings maybe. I'd certainly put wheels on these pieces of metal that run up and down these two runners. But for the purposes of doing this slab, it works fine. And I did a little experiment. I didn't waste time videoing me making a hell of a load of sawdust because it was just noisy and messy. But this is the side that was originally just rough sawn on this piece of wood. And that is now as flat as it needs to be for now. I won't be using this piece of wood to make into a table for a while, so it could well move, cup, warp slightly, but that is currently flat as a pancake. I've only got just over, I think it's a 5/8 of an inch cutter. I could do with a proper flattening bit, which is normally wider. So I've got more sort of marks in this piece of wood than you'd normally get with a proper flattening cutter, but I just wanted to do this as an experiment first of all. So that's nice and flat. Just flip it over. What's not flat is just that little bit there, which you may be able to see some light under there. But there's just a little cupped area there where the bandsaw that this was originally run through probably caught it or didn't quite cut cleanly. But I've run this under the router as well, and just it was quite raised at this end. And I say I will leave that, and then I'm going to take take a final cut off of this, because there's about 2.5, maybe 3 mil gap at the very bottom there, just in that little tiny shallow there. You can see where it's rough from the saw. But all in all, for something just knocked up out of what I'd laying around, it will do the job. And if I ever get round to using this more in anger, then maybe I'll put some bearings on it and make it a little bit more smoother running. But there you go, something you can throw together in half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever. Literally the longest time I think was actually making that plate that the router's mounted on, just literally cutting holes in it and mounting the router and finding some screws that fit. There you go, one very simple router sledge. Thanks for watching.